Welcome to A Novel Talk. I'm Wendy Kendall, cozy mystery author. I invite you to visit my website, wendywritesbooks.com, to see more about my published books of the In Pursuit mysteries. It all started with Cat Out of the Bag, where Cat, with a K, is Catherine Watson, a purse designer and amateur sleuth. When Bayside's town mayor is found murdered at the exciting purse fashion gala event, of course, Catherine feels compelled to investigate and find the killer before she becomes the next knockoff. This book is available on Amazon, Barnes& Noble, and all online retailers, as are all my Bayside mystery books, including Snow Kiss Cookies to Die For, which was finalist for Best Suspense at Killer Nashville. And, especially for summer, enjoy my romp of romance and mystery, Cherry Shakes in the Park. Find out more about all my books and more about me on my website, wendywritesbooks.com. And thank you very much to all my readers who've told me how much they've enjoyed my books. And book 6 in the series is on the way. And here's your co-host.
Thank you, Wendy. And I can tell you that we are waiting desperately for book 6 to come out. My name is Carl Lee. I write paranormal thrillers. My current project, Brenda McCoy, Witch Detective, has Brenda working with the FBI and the Seattle Police Department to try to figure out who's trying to frame her for bringing down the Seattle power grid.
Oh boy. Our guest today is Joy Allyson, the author of Whiskey Love, her debut novel. The daughter of a United States military officer, she grew up with a love of travel and a deep appreciation of history. As a teacher, Joy always preferred reading and writing historical romances. Her favorite characters? Rebel heroines and salvageable scoundrels. She resides among the rolling hills of Middle Tennessee with her husband and near her 2 daughters and grandchildren. Welcome to A Novel Talk, Joy Allyson.
Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, Carl. I'm so happy to be here with you all. Wendy, I loved Cat Out of the Bag. I enjoyed reading that so much and meeting you last summer at Killer Nashville. And Carl, I'm going to be reading your book. So this is exciting to talk to you both tonight about my book, Whiskey Love.
Well, thank you. It was a wonderful read, I have to say. And I'm not too far from you. I'm just a little north of Paducah, Kentucky. So
okay.
I'm not too far out of the woods from where you're at. And speaking of the woods, I love the setting of this story. Oak Hollow is a great backdrop to all this intrigue. What is most important to you when building a world where your story unfolds?
This story is about a young woman who inherits her family's whiskey distillery. And I was inspired. A friend told me that a woman inherited her husband's distillery in the 1890s. And of course, she was a matron and she ran it very successfully up until Prohibition. So that was the impetus for my story. So again, I wanted to have a book in a setting that I was familiar with. And obviously, I live in Middle Tennessee. And my research just drug me in, and why whiskey is so prominent to the Tennessee and the Kentucky area. You start with the topography and the geography of the area, that the pristine water gets filtered with the limestone bedrock. And of course, that makes natural filtration for the whiskey, which is why we have such good whiskey here. And also our hot, sweltering summers and our crisp, cold winters. Once the whiskey is barreled at the ebb and pull, and only taking the angel's share makes excellent whiskey and bourbon, depending on what state you're looking at. But it was in the 1890s. So I had a heroine that during that time, no woman was running a whiskey distillery, and very few women were running businesses at all. She was thrust into a situation she did not expect, and that's how the story unfolds, is how she develops and becomes stronger and actually prevails with lots of obstacles thrown in her way.
Yeah, just a few.
Yes, just a few.
This is such an intense and just an enjoyable read. And this historical period, it's an exciting one to travel back to in your novel.
Yes, yes.
Can you
Well,
tell us about, yeah, tell us some more about your, because I know you did extensive research about the time period, the whiskey industry, and maybe is there a favorite discovery you made that kind of surprised you?
the book does take place, opens in 1892, so it is the Gilded Age. And you think that maybe Tennessee is away from maybe the major industries that you read and hear and heard so much about. The railroads and the oil and the sugar trust and all that was going on back east. But my main character had actually been living in Boston for the past 10 years of her life. So she had connections to the East, which brings us to suspicion number one. The hero in the novel, Penland Kittrell, suspects her of having too close ties to the robber barons in the East. And he's suspicious that she might be selling out to one of the robber barons. And of course, he's thinking, I will be next. Researching, I visited 7 different distilleries and listening to them talk about their stories. One of the things that intrigued me, even though whiskey owners weren't women, they did hire a lot of women as opposed to other industries in that time period. Women were great bottlers. Their hand dexterity made them far superior to men workers. And the whiskey distillery owners, they discovered this right away. The majority, and in some cases, every one of their distillers, bottlers were women. And that was highly unusual for that time period. I think that was one of my biggest discoveries that I had no idea.
That is interesting. Wow.
Yeah. And getting back to the intrigue deep within this
Yes.
story, you keep an awful lot of plates spinning from page one. How do you manage to keep everything in order so you're able to tie each thread together at the best possible moment?
Great question. It helps to have a big bonus room with lots of floor space. I'm a visual person, and sometimes I would color coordinate where the stories were. Of course, it helps to have good editors and great critique partners.
Mhm.
But that's a key to drop hints. And of course, she inherits this distillery, and there's multiple people that you could suspect that do not want her to continue on successfully. There's, of course, the robber barons. There's men that are very resentful of a woman owning a business. And then the prohibitionists, the temperance people are some of them are very violent. And just nature itself, fires, storms that can affect the corn crop that is needed for the production of the product. Just a lot of editing and rereading on my part to try to, as you said, keep those threads going into the right direction and not reveal too much too soon. But if you go back and read the book, you can see, oh yeah, this was a hint, something's going to happen here.
Yes, definitely was able to do that.
I just love a strong, independent heroine, and wow, Chloe Tanner is incredible. Can you tell us a little bit more about her specifically, and just maybe how she faces some of the obstacles that come up?
She was very young, 19, 20 years old when this happened. She was the sole heir of this distillery, and she was just thrust into this situation, and everybody thought, oh, she's just going to marry her old rich cousin, and he will take care of everything, and we don't have anything to worry about. The business is going to go on. She realizes right away that the Tom Tanner Tennessee whiskey that her whole family, her grandfather started and was world famous at this time because it had won awards, was not going to exist as people knew it if she didn't hold the reins and keep the company together herself. She had been living with a spinster aunt in Boston, and this gave her, I think, the backbone to be strong. And when she came back to Tennessee, she just, with her upbringing and realizing it was up to her that this business was not going to survive, and along with her foreman, who would at this time be called a master distiller, Milo Knox, they have a symbiotic relationship. She can't continue to run the distillery without him. And of course, he's not going to be able to continue doing what he does without her. So together with her foreman, they are able to fight off a lot of different obstacles that get placed in their way. But again, I wanted a strong female character that was smart, funny, but had that backbone that could withstand what she was going to be up against.
Nicely done.
Yeah,
Thank you.
You just mentioned Milo the foreman.
Yes.
And he worked for her grandfather.
Yes. Yes.
And in the book, he serves kind of as a mentor role for her. Can you
Yes.
tell us a little bit more about him?
He is based on a real character. If you know,
He's a real character, all right.
the Jack Daniels whiskey story. If you ever visit or research Jack Daniels, when he was learning the whiskey trade from his mentor, there was at that time an enslaved man who would have been what you would call a master distiller, who helped him in the training. And then when Jack Daniels started his own company, he went with Jack Daniels, and the company does recognize him. In fact, there's an offshoot distillery called Uncle Nearest that's based on this person. But Milo is based on a real character.
Wow.
Well, handsome Penland Kittrell
Yes.
is an expert in all things whiskey. But
Yes.
Penn cannot make heads or tails of Chloe, his new neighbor and business rival, although there is an undeniable attraction and passions ignite between Chloe and Penn. Can you tell us about Penland Kittrell?
Yes. First, Penland is named after my grandfather. My grandfather's name was Penland.
Oh,
The little sidebar there. When you said he can't make heads or tails of his neighbor, Chloe, heads and tails is actually a whiskey term. When you're making whiskey, you don't want the heads or the tails. You want the middle part is the golden middle, which is the part that you're striving to continue in your whiskey journey. And so there's lots of little terms like that I've dropped throughout the novel, like Angel's Share and Heads and Tails, that relate to actual whiskey terms. But Penland, first off, he's sworn off women. And of course, he goes to the funeral to honor Chloe's grandfather and brother. And of course, he notices and is immediately captivated by Chloe. But he believes that she has ulterior motives. I mentioned that she was from the East, and he thinks her connections to some high-powered Eastern moguls is just a little bit too close. And he's very protective of his distillery, Penland Kittrell Whiskey Distillery. So he suspects her, and at first he's just standing back. He thinks she's going to maybe try to run the distillery about 6 weeks and then go back east. And she stays, and he starts noticing she brings in a new bottling machine. She sets up a whiskey a stock board where you can follow the whiskey prices, and does a couple of other things that he admires. So he grudgingly starts admiring her, and he's going to sit back and kind of be in the background, watching and seeing what she's doing. But at the same time, he's very instrumental in helping her be protected once he sees she is a target. Excuse me. Go ahead.
And speaking of being a target, when the Ted Tanner distillery is sabotaged, you have an expansive cast of suspects. What is important to deflect the reader's attention away from the real suspect?
First off, I wanted to make everybody be a suspect.
Well done.
So, yes. So when Milo says you couldn't have had this happen the day of the horse race because nobody would be a suspect, it had to be when you would suspect everybody. And once they discovered dynamite is what exploded the distillery, then you were able to think, okay, who had availability to dynamite? And that limited, but it also expanded some of the suspects.
As an author, what's most important in writing a romantic scene?
I've gotten a lot of compliments on the romance scenes
Yes.
in this book. Its point of view from Chloe, obviously she's inexperienced, so her point of view is she attributes it when she's talking about when she was first learning how to taste whiskey and discern about whiskey, and she just says, even as a novice, when I was a whiskey taster, I knew when something was the best, the outstanding. And it's like she discovers with Penn, we were meant for each other. This is awesome. This is the best. And again, it's hard to describe. When you read the love scenes, there are imaginings of, where am I? And she just places herself in a world she hasn't been in, but it's a world that she just loves. And in Penn's case, from a man's standpoint, if you go back and read Penn's point of view, it's almost like he is tasting whiskey. It's what you would, when you look at a decanter of whiskey, you're looking at the color, and he's looking at her eyes, her hair, how, her beauty, and then how she smells. He remembers she smells like roses and oranges. And then, in kissing her, tasting her, it's almost like he's tasting whiskey, but it's whiskey love.
Nice.
It is nice. Romance plays a huge, obviously it's a romance, but romance plays a huge part in the book, and there are a few of them. Chloe's maid, Bridget,
Yes.
is an awesome character. I love that character. And she starts dating one of
Corbin,
three brothers, Corbin
Triplets.
McCoy. Triplets, yes. And the other two brothers work for Penn.
Yes.
And Corbin works for Chloe.
Yes.
Can you tell me more about their relationship, especially after he leaves Kentrell to work for Ted Tanner?
Of course, Bridget is the red-headed Irish beauty, which is what Chloe very successfully used as a lure to get Corbin to become her general manager after she had to fire hers. Bridget is loyal to the T. She is. I think she's Chloe's like everyday conscious. She has common sense. She obviously sees there is an attraction between Penn and Chloe, and she's kind of, mentions, oh, he seems like such a nice man, seems to be interested. She's in Penn's, she's loyal to Chloe, but I think she's very in Penn's corner. Corbin is, he's knows his business. He's her general manager, but at the same time he's shy, but he's very attracted to Bridget, and he is persistent about courting Bridget. He wants to take her to a dance, and she just says, I don't know how to dance. And he goes to all the trouble to ask his boss, who is Chloe, to set up a dance practice. And he actually gets the groom to play the piano and the stable hand to play the harmonica, and then
I love that scene.
him to practice with Chloe. And I love that scene. And of course, when they're learning how to dance, Bridget's concentrating on her steps and trying to be, the perfect new dance partner. And Penn and Chloe are getting to know each other even more because of what she reveals about when she learned how to dance and things that happened in school. And it's the whole time all these dance moves are being, turn your partner, promenade west, the back and forth language conversations between Penn and Chloe was one of my favorite parts.
Yeah, it was awesome.
Joy, what is your favorite recommended whiskey for drinking while enjoying a great book like yours?
Oh my gosh. Well, I am not a big drinker, but I do love having an old fashioned, or on Derby Day, I'll have the Kentucky Derby Fantastic Bourbon. But I like Jack Daniels. It is a smooth whiskey. I think I definitely love that caramel taste. Four Roses, I like, and Old Forester. Those are three of my favorites.
Thanks for the recommendations.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And Joy, I was wondering, would you be willing to treat our listeners to a reading from Whiskey Love?
I'd be happy to. Hey there, Kittrell. You're out early. Benson Graham, Penn turned and greeted one of his school classmates from New York City who moved back after graduating to join the family's law firm. A very successful and lucrative practice, one which benefited from the many lobbying efforts generated from keeping close proximity to the Capitol. The two men stepped out of the way as a bellboy passed them carrying a vase of 24 pink roses to the elevator. Bet I know who those are for, Graham said. Saw who you were taking for a spin on the dance floor last night. Too expensive for my blood. Still love to dream about those arms holding me close. Don't get your hopes up, old chum. Not like in school where your handsome face and charming smile stole every girl we fancied away from us on the dance floor. Gossip around the tea tables is the rich old tyke up in New York was just biding his time. What are you saying? Word was the jury would be more generous if they perceived the victim as a destitute young thing without a penny or a man to turn to. Money follows money, doesn't it, my friend? Or is it money marries money? My mother said it will be a September wedding. Makes sense after a year of mourning and time for everyone to return from the Hamptons for the summer. She said plans were for Chloe to marry in the same church as her parents did. Penn's gut tightened like a steer being roped for branding. Wish I could stay and catch up, but I'm expecting a telephone call if you'll excuse me. Graham would know, he gritted his teeth. There wasn't much he'd miss in the way of rumors involving financial transactions flowing in every direction up and down the East Coast. So had that been the plan all along? Was Peter Tanner going to start with marrying the heir to Tom Tanner Tennessee whiskey, then one by one take possession of each and every one of them with his unscrupulous business practices, like falling dominoes, all the monopolistic trust, railroads, oil, sugar, tobacco. Was whiskey next? Of course it was. He wasn't that big of a fool. So what was he in this calculation before being blindsided by a takeover of his own company by another robber baron? Was he one more sweet memory for her before having to spend her wedding night with a groom old enough to be her grandfather? 3 hours later, he spotted Chloe pacing back and forth on the train platform for westbound departures. When he recognized him, when she recognized him, she raced up to him. Pen, I had a nightmare. You got in a carriage wreck or something. A relief you're finally here. You'll be so proud of me, she bubbled, grasping his arm. I've already telegrammed the Oak Hollow station master, and I telephoned my local attorney as well. They've assured me they will deal with everything until I arrive home this afternoon. Hurry! She pulled at his arm again. I'll tell you the rest on board. The train is leaving in minutes. I'm not going back to Tennessee today. What? I have other business in Washington I have to take care of. But I thought last night she asked in bewilderment. Last night was beautiful. I will always remember it. She remained motionless, her mouth open, speechless. I've come to say goodbye. He raised his hat. You've saved your company, Chloe. Now comes the hard part. Let's see if you can run it. He nodded, replaced his hat, turned, and walked away.
I love that scene. Thank you so much for that reading. It was wonderful.
You're
And
welcome.
thank you for joining us today.
You're welcome. Well, I've enjoyed this.
Yeah, this has been so great, and I love this book so much. And yes, thank you for joining us for a novel talk. And Joy, can you give us a word about what's next for your readers?
Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I have written a sequel to Whiskey Love entitled Whiskey Secrets. And this book takes place during the Prohibition era with the heirs of Tom Tanner Tennessee whiskey. And at that time, my research revealed there were a few whiskey distilleries that were granted medicinal contracts. So I'm allowing Tom Tanner Tennessee whiskey to receive one of those contracts. But needless to say, it's a Prohibition era, and there are lots of conflict and upheaval and lots of unscrupulous characters out there that would love to have either that contract or like to have the whiskey in itself. But it's called Whiskey Secrets, and it should be out in the fall.
Oh, yay. I can't wait.
Good. I think you'll love it. And please visit me at joyallison.com for updates. And can't wait to have another novel talk with you all about Whiskey Secrets.
Yes. Oh, yes. Oh, gosh, listeners, you definitely want to check out the website, joyallison.com. And also her Facebook page, Joy Allyson Author on Facebook. Joy, I know you love hearing from your readers.
I do.
And thank you to our listeners for tuning in. Be sure to like and subscribe so you never miss an episode. And remember, a novel read leads to a novel talk.